we don't know what is optimal. So I think, and we're not going to spend all our time trying to get better health. That would also be a waste of time. If I spend 5 hours every day to improve my health, then I'm kind of wasting my life. You need a good enough health so that you're able to do what you want to do in life, and you don't have to overdo it. So as long as you get some of this, you adjust, as I said, you do a little bit on every of these different strategies. Um, Maybe you need to invest half an hour or an hour every day to make sure that you live in a good way. Um, there will be this reward, for almost like 20 years more of life and health span. Of course, your podcast is called Healthspan, and that is just as important.
Hello, Dr. Færø. You are a medical doctor based in Norway and the author of The Pulse Cure, the revolutionary new way to balance stress, optimize health, and live longer. So, welcome to Modern Healthspan, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Richard. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. So, Dr. Færø, could you talk a little bit about your history and your current position and kind of how that led you to write the book, The Pulse Cure?
Yes, that's a bit complex background because I've been a doctor. I've been kind of a freelance locum doctor for 25 years. I've been working all over Norway. And the reason why I did that is that I was so interested in traveling, in photography, and I was teaching workshops in photography. So I was kind of leading a life where I was going somewhere around the world, photographing, and then going back to Norway, working around the clock for a couple of weeks in the districts of Norway. And yeah, and through the photography, I became interested in the autonomic nervous system, the system that works underneath our conscious mind, that just works for us. That tells us where to put our attention and so on. And I was writing a book called The Camera Cure, where I was using photography as a way to teach life skills. And through that book, I understood that the autonomic nervous system is much more important than we as doctors have been learning in the medical school. And when I later became aware that the heart rate variability is a metric that can tell us whether we are in the sympathetic, stressful state or in the parasympathetic, restful state. Then I was just, it was just so interesting to me. So I started tracking my own autonomic nervous system with wearables, with ECG monitors. And later, as I understood that we have these also in smartwatches and Oura rings that you have and so on, then I was using it to change my own lifestyle because I did everything wrong. Even as a doctor, I didn't think that the lifestyle mattered so much as we know today. I thought that if I do everything right, I may live a couple of years longer, but why bother? Because it takes 2 years to make all the right food and do the exercise and sleep longer and all of that. Now, of course, we know that there's so much more to gain and that the balance in the autonomic system is kind of the key to get the health, in the right direction. So, as I said, I was doing everything wrong, drinking a couple of glasses of wine every day, not exercising, not sleeping enough, stressing too much, smoking at times, and using some nicotine also. So, well, my father died at 73, and I decided that I will not share that destiny. I saw his sorrow, for living life, 10, 15 years early. And I understood that I start to look like my patients. I weighed 40 pounds overweight, 20 kilos overweight, and understood that if I continue this way, I'm not going to have the amount of adventures and pictures and interesting life for very much longer. So I changed everything around, and in that lifestyle change, the wearables that track heart rate variability has been just a revelation and a revolution.
Interesting. So, I also track many things, but I must admit, HRV for me at the moment is not very actionable. I look at weight and blood sugar and things like that, but HRV is, yeah, it's not one of the most actionable. But so you said a freelance doctor. So is that like a primary care doctor, but you
Yeah,
don't?
a
Yeah.
general practitioner and emergency medicine. So every county in Norway has to have a doctor 24/7, be on
Mhm.
call. And most doctors don't want to do that job. So it's been very easy for me to, whenever I want to work, I can go there, and as I can work a lot of amount in a short time, I can go out traveling and do other things that I want.
Right. That sounds excellent. Sounds really
It's
quite
been a
fun.
wonderful life. Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
wonderful life. Yeah, yeah. So I'm very happy. Yeah, I wouldn't change it for anyway. And maybe the key to finding out how to use photography for mental health and the nervous system and the pulse cure has also been to work differently than all the other doctors, and finding out what is now common, what we learned as medical doctors 25 years ago is so different from what we now know is important in preventative healthcare, in taking charge of your own health. So I think it has been an important detour so now I'm very interested in health. I didn't used to be. I used to be more interested in photography, but now I'm much more interested in preventative healthcare.
So we talked about HRV as one of the key metrics for kind of what state you're in. But can we take a step back and what is HRV and why do we have it? I mean, it would seem like having a regular heartbeat would be a good thing, actually. So why is having a higher HRV actually better?
Yeah, so the HRV, heart rate variability, is just that, the variation between heartbeats. And you would think that if you have a 60 in a heart rate, that your heart would beat every second, very, very steady. But it's not like that. So the heart rate, if we are in the relaxed state, in the parasympathetic state, that we are evolutionarily made to be most of the time, then when we breathe in, the heart rate goes up a little bit. And then when we breathe out and there's less oxygen in the lungs, it will go down a little bit to save some energy while there is less oxygen in the lungs. It doesn't amount to much, day by day, but over a lifetime, it's said to save us from 350 million heartbeats. So over time, it becomes very important. Um, and even more important, it's kind of a sign that you are in this relaxed state and how deep into this relaxed state you are. Because on the other hand, if you're in a stressful state for whatever reason, whether you have underslept, whether you have been eating the wrong food, you have been training too much, using alcohol or nicotine or smoking or whatever, if the body is stressed, then the heartbeat will be very steady. And then these wearables, the watches and rings, they can monitor this in real time, and over days and nights and months and so on, and can see whether your stress balance is sustainable and compatible with good health. And the reason why this is so important is that around 80% of the diseases that we treat as doctors these days are based in a too much stress, too much low-grade inflammation, of a stress system that is overtaxed, which reduces the efficiency of the immune system and lays ground for all of these modern day diseases that we unfortunately know too well.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that was a good explanation, but but
Yeah.
uh, but, but it gives us a window into the
Mm.
autonomic nervous system, and I think that part of the reason why the autonomic nervous system have been overlooked is that we haven't had a number for this. When you come and you are too stressed, if you're in a long COVID situation, if you are in a fatigue situation, we doctors take a lot of lab tests, a lot of radiological tests, and nothing comes out. But it's visible in the stress levels through heart rate variability.
Yes. Are there? Are there any reference ranges for HRV? So, and does it change with age?
It does change with age. It actually goes quite steep. It's kind of a reverse hockey stick curve. It goes quite fast down to your 40, and then it flattens out. And we can also see that, of course, in athletes that you can stay on the top of your game until you're kind of 35. After 40, you're almost no chance of keeping up in an endurance or strength related sport. So it will differ with age. And it's not a reference range, but there's an average range for a certain age. But it can be a big variation between the baselines in HRV. So one that has a baseline of 50 is not necessarily healthier than one at 25. But if you watch population studies, the lower the heart rate variability as a sign of more stress, the more disease of all kinds, including death of all causes. So in general, the higher the HRV, the more variation between heartbeats, the better. But on an individual basis, you cannot use it in that way. You shouldn't compare your HRV to anyone else's, just with your own, to see what is the best HRV that you can get. When are you at your best? For example, I have been on for 4 days now. I just came back yesterday evening from a very intense kind of a political health-related festival in Norway that is kind of the beginning of the political year. And so many meetings, so many lectures, so many intense moments. And when I see on the HRV that this is taxing my system. And before I would not have seen this, I maybe would have felt it. But when you can see the numbers and see the intensity, it gives you so much more information that I now know that I'm not going to go running today or exercising. I need to relax today, to do calm things, to balance the stress that I've had in the last 4 days. So it gives you the wearables are kind of like a speedometer for your physiological intensity. And of course, when you have the speedometer, it's so much more easy to regulate your speed according to the circumstances. And we are really poor at that. We have never, as humans, needed to develop this sense. We have been needing senses for outdoor threats. We have excellent eyesight. We can see 10 million different colors. We can smell 1 trillion different smells, according to the experts. I'm not the smell expert. We can hear sounds, from all ranges and from a far distance. We can touch things. We can feel things. If there's a slight wind blowing, we feel it on our skin. But whether I have 60 or 85 in a heart rate, I have no idea. And this will represent a huge difference in inflammation and stress levels. And if we had felt that throughout the historical times, it would have been disturbing the threats from the outside world. So a lot of people say that, can't we just feel it? No, we can't. We are really poor at it. And this is part of the reason why we have ended up with so many people having stress-related diseases.
Can you have too high an HRV? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, it could be, because but that would be because of a disease, maybe. Because if you have a atrial fibrillation, you would, of course, have a high variation between heartbeats. So if you get a sudden, abrupt difference in HRV, that may be the cause. But in general, from what I see, and I have a website with 4,000 members, so I get asked this a lot. And when I see people with a high HRV, it's generally a sign that they're fit, in a good shape, and the higher, the better, from their baseline. So if one person goes from like 40 in HRV to 80 or 100 because they start using the steps in the pulse cure, that's a good sign. They feel better, and that will show in the stress levels. Yeah.
If there's one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it is magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 600 critical reactions, including hormone balance, stress management, sleep quality. Even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. But there are two big problems here. The magnesium in the soil has been drastically reduced since the 1950s and is also removed by food processing, which explains why it's estimated that up to 75% of the population may be deficient. And most supplements contain only 1 or 2 forms of magnesium when our body needs 7. The only magnesium supplement on the market that has the full spectrum of all 7 forms is Magnesium Breakthrough by BiOptimizers. BiOptimizers are offering an exclusive deal for my audience, and it's for a limited time while stocks last. Right now, you can get a bottle of Magnesium Breakthrough for free. Just go to magbreakthrough.com/modern free. Thank you for your support. We talk about stress and the parasympathetic and sympathetic. Is that the only thing that's driving HRV? So suppose you had a heart disease. Would you be able to see that within your HRV?
Yes, in a lot of cases. So if you get a heart disease, a heart trouble, you know, that would be a change. Then you would see that in a heart rate variability. Lots of people have told me that they saw something changing, went to the doctor, took an ECG, and it was trouble, and they went straight into the ICU. So that can happen, absolutely. But mostly, and you ask if there are other things. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system reacts to almost everything. Okay, so if you have a poor mitochondrial function, mitochondrial dysfunction, or if you have dysbiosis in your intestinal, in your microbiome, if there's a temperature change, everything goes back to the heart rate. The heart will respond to almost any kind of stressor you can think of. That is why it is hard. That is why maybe it's hard for you to find it actionable, because there are like literally hundreds of things affecting your stress levels. When I last week was in this conference, this festival I was talking about, my heart rate variability was affected by eating chili, by eating bakery goods, by being in the sauna, by having 1 glass of beer or a bottle of beer, by so many things, you know. And that was a big surprise to me, because the first couple of years that I was using an ECG monitor, and I had no guidebook. The PulseCure is still the world's first guidebook in how to use wearables and heart rate variability. So I thought I was always calm, because I had learned about the sympathetic nervous system as a fight, flight, and freeze system. I was never scared. I was never fighting. I was never fleeing from anything. So I just had to assume that I was in a complete parasympathetic state. And I've always heard from everybody around me that you are so calm. So I was just expecting to see all, you know, calm, good, green numbers coming out. But it was all red. You know, it was all stress. And I had to detangle this, and finding out that, okay, I was using nicotine in some form we have in Norway. We put it under our lip, you know, full of nicotine. I thought it was calming me down because I felt calmer putting it in. I could clearly see that this is raising my heartbeat with 10, you know, from 60 until 70, and a huge impact on the HRV. I saw that eating bakery goods, gluten, milk stressed my system. Chili in a large way, horrible. It could last for days. Alcohol, terrible. And so many other things that I would never, even as a doctor, think of as a stress on my system. So it was a huge job, you know, for those 2 years, detangling all this information and finding out how to get in a good stress balance and find a more peaceful way. And we get used to having that lifestyle that we have. I didn't know that there was another level of energy that I could have, that I didn't have to be tired at the end of the day, you know. I didn't know. I had never experienced that, you know. I used to drink 2 glasses of wine every day, because I thought it would calm me down. But when I see the results on the HRV, I see it's terrible. And of course, according to Whoop, the American brand that tracks their users, see that alcohol is the worst stressor of all, by far. For women, the premenstrual week is a huge physiological load on their system. and particularly in the female reproductive system, the stress on their systems that go on the HPA axis, and the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. When they have too much stress, it gives so many diseases, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility even, and PMS symptoms. And I think a lot of women don't just think that it's a feeling, the PMS symptoms, but we can see clearly on the wearables that it's a physiological load. And the Norwegian soccer team, they are using the Oura rings to track their menstrual cycle so that they can adjust the intensity of their training according to it to level out the stress. So I don't know where we started on this, but anyway, it's difficult to find the way, and this is why I've written the Pulse Cure.
Yes, that is all. Yeah, and that is very interesting. So that's HRV. How do we measure it? Okay, so we need to track it. I mean, I'm using an Oura ring like yourself, but that is actually the only one that I have. So what device do you use to get, especially to get the more kind of detailed HRV during the day?
Yeah, so for the time being, I use both the Garmin watch, which is by far the best watch and the best system. And it's not because of Garmin, the watch in itself, but it's because they have bought the company Firstbeat's analytic system, the algorithms, and implemented it into their watches. So Firstbeat Analytics is have been working for 20 years with physiological measurements. And that is the reason why they are better and not the watch in itself. And then I use the Oura ring because for sleep, Oura is by far the best to track the sleep phases and the sleep quality. So I like to use both, and it's also kind of the other one is a kind of a second opinion to see if they are moving, at the parallel the numbers that I get. But Garmin is by far more important because from the Oura ring you will get a result in the morning. From your readiness, but you will not have the same kind of window into why is this readiness number like this. And the Garmin watch will tell me that, okay, the problem was what I was eating for lunch. That is when the stress, like you went skyrocketing, and sky high. So, and then I can see that, okay, that was because of the bakery goods. Or I can see that, okay, the problem was started when I was eating the chili that I didn't know, because people put chili in like everything. And because so few people have allergic reactions to it, it's not mentioned, in the ingredients in the when you buy something or particularly at the restaurant. So I can only see it that my heart rate just bounces up quick. So the Garmin that measures all the time, it measures as I speak. Now, for example, I have a heart rate of 87. I don't know. Usually I would have 60 in this situation. So, but it has been an intense week. So the good thing about Garmin is I can push a button and then I can see my stress levels in the moment. And then you can mitigate it so much easier, which you can't, of course, with the Oura ring. So I can see, for example, now if I was in another situation, I could have seen that my stress level is high, and I can start a breathing exercise, breath work for a minute or two to calm myself down. I can't do that now because we're talking, but I could do that if I was in a meeting or in some other situation. So then you have this is speedometer accessible as you go in your everyday life, and that makes it so much easier to upregulate and downregulate because that's also really important. We are supposed to stress. We are supposed to put strain on our systems. We just have to make sure that we balance with enough downtime to not hurt our immune system and our physiology. So we're absolutely supposed to do exercises both physically and mentally to push ourselves. So that's important.
What model of Garmin do you use? And are you using it with a chest strap or is it just on its own?
Yeah, if I go running, exercising, then you really need the chest strap to get accurate results, because once you start moving vigorously, then something can happen. It can kind of start showing totally different numbers. So if I'm exercising and running, because I'm training for the New York Marathon this November,
Oh,
then I put on the chest strap. But the most important things for athletes is not the heart rate as you're running, but is your heart rate reaction to your exercise afterwards. So whether I'm in if I'm fully recovered, I can do the half hour round that I usually do, and I can go back into parasympathetic mode quite quickly afterwards. But if, like today, my system is strained, I can do exactly the same exercise. I can have the same heart rate as I'm running, but afterwards, my body will struggle to get back into the parasympathetic mode for many hours. I would say for athletes and people exercising, it's more important to watch your heart rate after the hours afterwards, and maybe even the night afterwards to be able to regulate. And that is particularly important if you have a low VO2 max. A VO2 max is a metric for how well your body metabolizes oxygen. You need a lot of good mitochondria to do that. And if you have a poor VO2 max, maybe 30 or even below, then your body cannot really tolerate much exercise before starting to having too much lactate or lactic acid um, to struggle with. So many people, on a New Year's Eve, they start out really hard, and they're overtaxing their bodies, creating a lot of cytokines in their systems, feeling sick for days, and giving up. Particularly with the Garmin watches, you will see the VO2 max, and you will, after an exercise, you will get a number of the hours necessary to recover. And if you're in a poor fitness level, that will be surprisingly, shockingly high afterwards. But it's really important to take into consideration.
yes. Yeah, I've got a Garmin, and it does show me that. It is an old one, so it doesn't do like real-time HRV as far as I can see. But yeah, it does tell me how many hours I need to rest, and maybe I should pay more attention to that because at the moment I tend to ignore it. And just
Yeah, because if you train too hard, you will put a strain on your body before it's ready to give you the payback for it. So it may be still recovering from the last time. And if you just
right.
put more load on the system. So actually, if you Google exercise and heart rate variability, you will find that so many people, when they start using heart rate variability as a measurement to dose their training, for the dosage of training, then you'll see that they can train less and they get better results because they put strain on their body when it's ready to handle it.
Yes, let me think about that. Yeah, because I'm trying to get my VO2 max up, and I'm using the Garmin. And I'm trying to keep myself in zone two. But
Yeah,
yeah, if I go running when I don't feel very good, then I can't. I mean, I just go straight out of zone two and into higher because the heart rate just
yeah,
goes up. And so probably
yeah,
that's not actually helping at all. I should just stay at home.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you should do meditation or breath work or yoga or stretching or yeah,
Something
relax.
else.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Oh, well, that's a good excuse. Um, so just on the Aura, so the Aura Ring has recently added a couple of features. So one is, so it now it gives me like a stress number during the day. I have a little graph as well. It's not very detailed, and it also has a resilience, which it's like strong or not. So have you looked at that? Do they have?
Yes, I've looked at it. It's a lot more crude. It's a lot less actionable than the Garmin. I think that probably because it's harder to put so much power into a ring, maybe to
Hmm.
analyze all these things. So they're not measuring so much during the day. It would take too much battery time, To, so
Hmm.
uh, So I think it's compared to Garmin, it's almost useless, I would say. Yes, I would be
Okay.
that tough.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I don't use it very much. So, but most modern Garmins will have the capability that you have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Most even the Garmin watches, and I have no affiliations. They start at maybe $150, and that would not have heart rate variability over time. When you come up to the watches probably costing about $300, then you would get HRV over time, and that is very important because then you can see the changes in your system. Because Garmin will adjust itself to your new baseline. So you may do big improvements, but you would be uh, it would adjust to your new level, and you would not necessarily see it so clearly with the cheapest version. So you need to see your heart rate variability over time. That is when the women can see that the week before menstruation is as hard physiologically, or can be as hard physiologically, as a COVID infection or as a whole week of alcohol and partying. So it's easier to see that when you have the heart rate variability over time. But I must also say that now this changes almost by the day. Now Samsung is coming with their new watches with more artificial intelligence in it. They're coming with a Galaxy Ring. So in this area, there's so much competition. And that is good for me as a doctor, because normally the competition in health is in finding expensive medications that you have to use for the rest of your life, you know. So now there's money, and you have to follow the money, you know. There's money into making it possible for you to stay healthier for a longer time. And that is I'm very optimistic about that. So many things happening. So maybe in 3 months, I'm going to say that Samsung is the best, you know, so who knows? But just now, Garmin is by far the best, and they will be, you know, at the top of the game for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. It definitely made me think maybe I need a better watch because yeah, this one's too old. Okay, so that's how we measure it. So how do we change it, or what are the key causes? And so one of the things I watched your lecture, and I will link to that in the notes. So it's one of the things I liked. You said, well, you need to do a little bit of everything rather than what like one or two things very well, which I think
Yeah.
is a really good thing. So what are the major buckets, the major levers that we have to play with HRV?
Yeah, that is actually the same as there's been a huge American study following American veterans, 700,000 of them for 11 years. And they have found 8 key areas that affects health. So if you do those 8 areas in the right way, you live 24 years longer than the ones who don't. And that is also my clinical experience from patients. And those areas are better sleep, exercise, stress management, the right nutrition, and, as little alcohol as possible. It is relationships, to have good relationships, and is avoiding opioids. You know, they have a big opioid crisis. There was even one more, but I can't remember at the time which one that was. But anyway, all these things that are good for us shows up in the heart rate. When we do the things that are good, the heart rate responds and improves. And in this area, you need to sleep better. You need to sleep 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep. Not just the actual hours, but that your sleep has been restorative during those hours. And this is what the wearables can tell you through heart rate variability. You need to eat food, real food, whole foods, and try to stay away from ultra-processed foods. You need to stay away from foods that you react to, that you will find out, like me with bakery goods and gluten and chili and so on. This is very individual. So what you react to could be something totally different from what I react to. And you will also find out that in the eating, that the restricted feeding window is good. Maybe that you're eating for like 8 hours a day, maybe from 11 until 7 or so. At least not eat before you go to bed. That is that you will see immediately in the heart rate variability. You need to do exercise. Both strength and endurance is good, but you should not overdo it either. So there's a sweet spot, maybe like 3 hours a week or so of moderate intensity, preferably zone 2, as you say yourself, of exercise. That will have a huge impact also on your HRV. Alcohol, as little as you can. When you see the physiological price of alcohol, most people are terribly shocked when they see the results of this. And yeah, make sure that you have good relations and try to work on that. And yeah, and then to find ways to stress down. That can be breath work that is always accessible, to breathe slowly, maybe 6 breaths a minute. That is a clear sign to your nervous system that it's calm outside. We have, I call the autonomic nervous system is our inner living fossil, because it's a system that we have inherited from animals, 100 million years ago or 200 million years ago. It still is dependent on outside, what it can see and feel. And when we breathe more slowly, it's a clear sign that you can relax now and let the restorative processes start, and improve. And also temperature is a big one. So to take a cold shower or a cold plunge is also very good for restoration, to dampen inflammation. So I usually start with a cold shower in the morning. Cristiano Ronaldo, you're English, so you know soccer players. Cristiano Ronaldo, he uses a Whoop band. He says it's like having a doctor on your wrist. I would say it's even better than that. But he has 200 of the days. He logs cold showers and cold immersion therapy on his Whoop band. So that could be very important for people to use the cold to downregulate the inflammation in the bodies. So that was at least what I could remember right now to do.
Going back to one of the things, so if you have, I'm trying to think, it's not allergies, the one that's one lower than allergies, reactions to food like
Yeah.
gluten. So it's actually very difficult to tell whether you have a reaction to gluten if you don't go the full way to allergy. So would this allow you to do that? You kind of, okay, I eat it, and then
Yeah.
today, and you watch your HRV.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that was one of the big surprises I got early in my measurements, when I, of course, had no clue that food could stress and have any effect on the heart rate. So I was not eating breakfast, and then I was having, instead of my usual salad lunch, there was kind of a birthday, or maybe some colleague was quitting or something, but there was a huge cake. And I was taking 2 large chunks of it, 2 big pieces, and my stress level just kind of accelerated for like 4 or 5 hours afterwards. And I was just shocked, what's this? I've just been eating, and I'm still doing the same job, before and after lunch. So there was no other difference from there. But then I've seen that so many times that when I eat baker goods or bread or so, it will affect my stress systems. And it took me even longer time to differentiate from the chili. So that was when I was eating sausages 2 days in a row, and the one day I was eating sausages with chili, and the other day exactly the same sausages without chili, and I saw that there was a huge difference. And of course, I've been eating chili all my life, but I am never, when I wake up in the morning, feeling this way or that way, relating it to what I was eating 12 hours earlier. It was just not in my mind. But these are the things that you start to detect when you see that your heart rate is responding to this, and it responds quickly and fast. And actually, I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the podcaster told me that there was one Dr. Coca. It sounds suspicious, but in the 50s, he had something he called the pulse test, where he was advocating that if you are food intolerant to something, you can eat it, and then you will see that if your heart rate goes up, it's a sign that you are intolerant to this particular food. And he was right. And this is kind of the allergy, one of the pioneers. He's the one that coined the term atopy, or atopia. I'm not sure what to say in English, in eczema and allergy. So he was a smart guy. So and we can see it clearly, and so many people find this out, and so many people respond to me on Instagram and so on, and tell me that when they got rid of this food, they got rid of symptoms of pain and fatigue that they've had for like 30 years. So it's an important thing. So if you I would say that, often say that to people, if you do all the right things in the post cure, and it's still a lot of stress, you should do a good food intolerance test. And very often that shows that there is some problem here.
Yes. Yeah. My wife is really trying. We're trying that with her. We feel that there's an intolerance in there, and we've tried various intolerance tests, but have not really narrowed it down. But I think potentially with a HRV device, we might be able to do that.
Yeah, and particularly if there's a big difference between the fasting state, because some of the good things about using the wearable is that you can see that the cold water, which is uncomfortable, will have a good effect on your physiology and autonomic nervous system. And also in the same way that fasting. So the first time I was fasting, I was expecting to see stress on my monitor because it felt very uncomfortable to be hungry. But I saw that, wow, it's completely in the parasympathetic state. So it's no wonder that all cultures, all the religions have had fasting as a way to sharpen their minds. And all culture more or less have had some ways of going into the cold water, and maybe also the cold water and into the sauna to heat. It's spread out on so many diverse cultures. And when you see the result on your monitor, doing the hard things, like staying away from the chocolate, staying away from the glass of wine, doing the breath work, doing the cold plunge, is so much easier when you see the reward. It's kind of a gamification of your physiology, and most people think it's really fun. A lot of people think when they hear it the first time, oh, that will be very stressful. They think to watch my heart rate, but most people find that this is just a game. It becomes much more fun to have this window into our own function and physiology. So of course, a lot of people will find out, as 80% of the diseases that we treat and struggle with are based on stress. Quite a few people will find when they start tracking their systems that they are under stress. They see red numbers, stressful days when they were not expecting to. And for many of those people, it will require quite a long time and quite a lot of effort to be able to mitigate that stress. But it's not a solution to throw away the watch. Just like if you find out that you have a pneumonia, it's no solution to throw away the thermometer. It will not help, So a lot of people who will start tracking their system will have a long way in front of them. It took me 2 years to get my system under control, and I have no mental struggle. It was just it was just food, alcohol, lack of exercise, lack of sleep. Yeah, I've never been in a I've always enjoyed life.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to come back to that in a second, but just one thought. So I saw in your lecture you talked about sunlight helping with HRV. So do you think red
Yeah,
light therapy would help?
I think so. I think red light therapy that will improve the mitochondria will help. Yeah. It will probably be different. It will probably differ. For example, if you have a good VO2 max, you are well trained, and then you use a red light therapy, there may not be much to gain, maybe.
Mhm.
But maybe another person who is in a poor shape that has poor functioning mitochondria then get red light therapy, that may be a much bigger change in the effect of it. But I see many people responding, and I see also for myself that red light therapy can be a good improvement on the heart rate variability, and particularly sunlight. The curves that I see, particularly in Norway, there's so much difference. Uh, in heart rate variability. And my own, I was sailing 2 weeks in the Seychelles, close to the equator this summer, and the HRV just goes from 40 on an average to 50, and that's a huge difference. And that is because of the sunlight and the getting the sunlight throughout the day. Because of course, when you're sailing, you're outside most of the day. And when I come back home, it goes down again. So sunlight, and there's a huge UK study now with I don't know, probably 100,000 people, a huge study showing that sunbeds, solariums, and being exposed to sunlight has a huge good effect on the health, and it does not have a bad effect on melanomas that we have been so scared of. So that we as doctors have been scared of the sun, that our cells have been developed to function under for these millions or if not billions of years, our cells,
Mhm.
is just a hugest mistake I can imagine. Of course, an organism developed underneath the sun for a million of years, a billion years, um, will have found a way to use the sunlight to improve its function. And of course, as in anything else, it's a dosage problem. You have to, too little or too much will be wrong, but you have to find the right dosage of sunlight, and it will show in heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is higher, better in the summer in the north than in the winter. It's quite a huge difference. And all diseases of almost any kind will be more frequent in the winter time than in the summertime. And as HRV is an indicator of the state of our immune system, as confirmed by Jenna Makiyoki, who has been overlooking she's an immunologist, have been overlooking the immunological chapter of the Pulse Cure. She says in her book, Immunology, that HRV is a measure of the state of our immune system. So, and when that is lower in the winter, it lays ground for all kinds of diseases to 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 come forward. So, and better than in the summer.
Yes. So going back to your previous thought, how would you get a baseline? So because you said it took like 2 years, so I can see that. Well, there's a couple of questions in here. One is, how long would it take before you would see an improvement? And how is there anything you should do to get a baseline for your HRV? Should you maybe like take a fast or a water fast for 12
Mm.
hours or something, and then say, okay, well, this is like the best I am at the moment?
Yeah. So the best thing I think would be the Garmin watches spends 3 weeks finding your baseline. So for the first 3 weeks, you will not get a heart rate variability number. It is just still working on it. And I would say that after those 3 weeks, when you get the heart rate variability, just do what you normally do so that you don't change anything, so that you know where you start from. I would love to know now the numbers from when I started or 10 years ago. So don't change anything and then start changing one thing so that you can understand what affected it. So, and to find out your optimal level, maybe you should go for a weekend, relax, eat food that you don't react to, and uh, relax, don't drink alcohol, go for a nice walk in the nature, and then you may find, okay, this is the level, this is my top performance, HRV wise, uh, from this weekend maybe. So that is what I do
Yeah.
to see that if I go sailing, it's a calm day, then I see that, okay, my optimal, my record would probably be like 59 or so in HRV, while my average would probably be 45. My worst, if I'm really, really the hardest day, maybe down to 25. So
Mhm.
it's this variations that I find. And we don't know what is optimal. So I think, and we're not going to spend all our time trying to get better health. that would also be a waste of time. If I spend 5 hours every day to improve my health, then I'm kind of wasting my life. You need a good enough health so that you're able to do what you want to do in life, and you don't have to overdo it. So as long as you get some of this, you adjust, as I said, you do a little bit on every of these different strategies. Maybe you need to invest half an hour or an hour every day to make sure that you live in a good way. There will be this reward, for almost like 20 years more of life and health span. Of course, your podcast is called Healthspan, and that is just as important, because we see that the health span of people living against the sleeping. If you sleep too little and too poorly, you drink alcohol, you don't exercise, you eat the wrong food, you eat junk food at the wrong times, all throughout the day and night. You have poor relationships. You're using opioids. You have no way to regulate your stress levels. You'd be lucky to pass 70 years, and you'd be lucky to be able to move and do what you want to when you're 50. But if you do these things right, my experience as a doctor is that you can enjoy your life almost until you're 90 years old. And then it will start, in a period of 2, 3, 4 years, it will deteriorate quite steeply. But you will have a good health span almost into your 90s if you do these things right, or you have a good chance of achieving that. There's no guarantee, of course, but you have done what is in your powers to do that.
Yes. And I really like that part of your message as well, which is that it allows you to take control of your own health. Because I think that's one of the key messages that I want to kind of give with this channel is you have to own your own health. Right? You
Yeah.
can't outsource it to a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can, and that is what we did not learn in medical school. And I think that the impression for most people out there, even the doctors, is that disease is a matter of genetics or bad luck, and that your control of it, outside quitting to smoke, is negligible. And we now know that we have maybe 80% control of our health, because of the lifestyle diseases. So it's a huge shift in power. And what these wearables also do is that they take the powers from the doctor and the healthcare system and put it literally in your own hands, on your wrist. So it's so much easier to achieve what you want, because what is good for you will be shown in your heart rate.
Yes. So have you, from all your study, has this changed the way that you deal with your patients? If that's something that you can talk about.
Yeah. For a lot of the time, I worked then as a locum doctor. I come into some place where the rest of the weeks of the year I'm not there. So what I mainly do as a doctor is observe and to see, and also to be frustrated by the fact that 80% of the ones I treat and the medicines that I prescribe, they did not need to have if they lived in another way. So it's kind of a source almost for the frustration, energy necessary to write the book and to be talking about this message. But of course, sometimes, and most of those are not motivated to do anything. If I say that there's something that you could do about it, they can become almost furious. They don't want anything. They don't want there to be any connection between what they're doing and the disease they're struggling with. They want that to be my responsibility and that it happened from some outside cause that they have no responsibility to. They don't want to hear that, most of the patients. But there will be some patients during the day, and that will more often be younger people, that I may see that they have a pulse watch, and I may ask, can I see your results, and then I can get a quick overview and give them some information on what they can read from their wearable, and they will often be much more. They will know, the younger generation that listen to podcasts, they are on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they know the modern message of medicine, that you can't control it. So they will be open to take charge of their own health. Yeah. But usually I just do my job as a doctor, give them the medicine that they want,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, I can see, especially in as a kind of the visiting doctor, that you don't have much choice there. What is your personal protocol for
Mhm.
your optimal health span?
Yeah. So optimally, I would make sure that I get a good night's sleep. That will mean that in the last couple of hours before I go to bed, I calm down. I turn down the lights. I read a book. I do something that is restorative and that I can see on my watch also that is. I will have not eaten the last 4 hours before I go to bed, not eating anything. And then sleep well, wake up in the morning refreshed, do a cold shower. I will end the normal shower with a 2 minute at the coldest, just switch it to the coldest. Um, I may do some journaling in the morning. I may do that, write 1 or 2 pages longhand, just from my intuition, just from, well, what pops up into my mind. It's just a kind of a creativity exercise. And then I would just do my day. I will not eat breakfast. I will not eat until 12 o'clock, until lunchtime. So I'll try to have 2 larger meals. At my lunch is kind of a salad. It's whole foods, nuts, food that grandma would recognize as food, or my great grandma would recognize as food. And then I would have my dinner at maybe 6 or 7. Um, yeah, and then maybe take some breaks during the day, just short ones, maybe 2 minutes of a breath work, breathing slowly, if I see it's needed. If I see that I'm calm in a good level, I don't do that. Yeah, that's mostly it. And I try to exercise. I will go running for half an hour twice a week, and I will do 1 day of strength training while I'm writing. So I'm often writing on a book or doing some office work. Then I will do exercises, and in between I'll be writing. Maybe, and then 5 minutes writing, one exercise, 5 minutes writing, one exercise, something like that. Yeah. Um,
Right.
that's more or less it. And only use alcohols, maybe 1 glass or 2, 5 times a year. Yeah. So.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Is because you're meant to rest in between sets when you're doing exercise. So yeah, you could really rest and do some writing or something. Uh, but yeah, so one question in there. So you said that you are a 24-hour on-call doctor, but you also prioritize sleep. So how do these
Yeah.
two fit together?
Yeah, because I usually work at in a district, and it's usually calm at night. So
Right.
maybe I get woken up maybe every third or fourth night or so. And that was also a surprise. So many people get surprised also in the other end. So I used to think that working as a doctor was stressful. You
Mm.
work as a doctor, you're on call. So I would think that this is stress, and I need to not work too much. But now with the wearable, I see that is the calmest thing I can do. So going to some island, some district, and being a doctor 24/7, it is normal office hours. Maybe I'll be in the office maybe 10 hours.
Mm.
And then after that, maybe 1 or 2 patients, 3 patients until midnight, usually calm at night. That is the calmest things I do. My best, that is my best, that is a good way to find my best baseline. And even also in the ER, where there are patients all the time, and then from all kinds of different problems, from very serious and to easier ones. And that is also one of the calmest things I can do, because, of course, as an ER physician, you know that you have to keep your head calm. So you are used to being very calm, even if all trouble comes into your office. You need to keep calm, and that is just a mindset of 25 years of working in that way. So at least that shows that I can do that work. That is not a strain on my system. And so
Interesting.
many
Yeah.
people find out this also. Maybe they have jobs that they would think stress them, and they see that no, I'm in the flow on my job.
Yeah, interesting. I had not thought about that, I must admit. And normally, yeah, I mean, being on call is, well, I used to do it. No, I wasn't a doctor, but I have been on call for various things. It can be a bit stressful. Okay, Dr. Færø, thank you so much for joining us today. So, where can people find out more about you, and so they can get the book, the Pulse Cure, from like all bookshops like Amazon or what
Yeah,
have you?
so it will be on Amazon. It's an ebook. It's also an audiobook. So if you have an iPhone or probably a Android, you can get it in the book apps. At least on iPhone. I don't have a Android, so I don't know, but so it could be 2 touches away. And then it's a normal paperback version, and then we also have this website that you refer to with the pulsecure.com, where you can see my video lecture where I can show the graphs and show more in detail how this works. And on Instagram, I'm on Dr. Torkil, dr.torkil. So it's possible to follow me there. Yeah.
And the book itself kind of walks you through a process of
Yeah.
improving
It's
your HRV.
improving. Yeah, I call it stages of an expedition because changing your lifestyle is hard. It's like an expedition. So
Mm.
there are like stages, sleep, exercise, stress management, active rest, alcohol, nutrition, and so on. So it's kind of a yeah, it's kind of a expedition that you go on.
Is there an end point? Do you think you've reached the end point, or is it it's a journey and there is no end?
Yeah, it's a journey. When you think you're finished, you're finished. So it's a constant, and you have to be curious. You have to want to improve. So
Yeah,
the people that don't care about improving, that is not connected to good health. So you have to always have some focus on improving and being interested in it, being curious, and you also have to be satisfied with the kind of good enough. So you need to have a good enough health. You need to have you need to have health normalization and not necessarily a health optimization. We don't know what that is. The optimal people that come into my office have done nothing spectacular. The ones that are healthy and vital into their 90s have just been living flexible, interested life, with the curiosity, with movement, with enough sleep, enough rest, a good balance. They have not done anything out of the way. They have done things that are free. All the advice in the Pulse Cure are free. Sunlight, breath work, cold showers is even cheaper. Meditation, uh, the right food, quitting alcohol. Well, it's all free, so it's accessible for anyone.
yes. Yeah, it's getting a bit philosophical, but because that is kind of the message we get from the blue zones as well, which is you just have to move. But I mean, are you aware of Peter Attia, Dr. Peter Attia?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay. I
yeah,
mean, but he seems to be much more intense in the way
yeah,
he works out, the way he looks
yeah,
at optimization
yeah,
for old
yeah.
age.
And it may be something in it, absolutely. And so many people are doing this journey to lifespan, that like David Sinclair and Brian Johnson and Peter
Mm.
Attia, and going into details about certain NAD and all of these things. And quite possibly there will be a huge revolution in there, but so far I I, I haven't seen it yet. I would have thought that I would have seen that yet, that they
Yeah.
reached 120 easily, but the human physiology developed under billions of years. I think we have much more to gain from living with our biology than against it. And 90%, I think, of what we can do to our own health is living more in tune with our biology, in tune with the lifestyle that we as hunter-gatherers have had through millions of years. And that would be the first thing I would do. And that is free, because all of these things that Peter Attia and the other advocate, that it costs a lot of money. You want this thing, you want that thing, it costs $100 a month of each of them. I can't afford it. So I'm waiting for them to find something that is really obviously a good thing to do. So I'm still waiting. So while I wait, I'll do the free things.
Yes. And on that note, Dr. Færø, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you.